Okay. Welcome everybody to tonight's class on the Sukka 5785. Call it the Insider's Guide to the Sukka. And we're going to basically talk about the basics of how a sukkah needs to be made and some exceptions and some things that might be helpful. I've gotten lots of questions in the sense this class is a little bit late. This the holiday starts in less than 24 hours. But if you're still building your sukkah, if you're still working on it, or if you think it's made and it's worth re-examining to make sure it's perfect, there are ways to do that. There's still time. Okay. With that said, it's Sukkot is a holiday in which we build a structure, a sukkah, in which we reside for sorry for the entire holiday of Sukkot. In From the first day of Sukkot, first night of Sukkot, all the way through Hoshana Rabbah, and even some of Shmini Atzeret, which is the next holiday. We reside in the sukkah. We eat all of our meals there, definitely the full meals, and in other words, with bread and with company, we should definitely men are obligated to eat those meals inside of a sukkah. Many You might have heard that women are not necessarily obligated, but many women take it upon themselves. There's nothing wrong with a woman sitting and eating in a sukkah for sure, and that is there's it's a beautiful mitzvah. Aside from the actual obligation to reside there, there's also an obligation, unless it's too cold or uncomfortable or unhealthy some other way, one should sleep in the sukkah. So really, the sukkah is supposed to be where you reside, where you take your naps, where you rest, where you sit down and read a book, or whatever else you do for entertainment. The sukkah is the place for that during this entire holiday. To the point where the Mate Ephraim has to mention to us that if the sukkah was not just built for Sukkot, if it was built for hanging out throughout the year, and it's possible, you can have a little porch, structure, sort of like gazebo type thing where you're spending your free time in good weather outside. It's very good, very healthy. And if that's what you do, that's fine. However, if it's a structure that you have to enter into, then you would have to have a mezuzah. But on Sukkot, if you're only building the mitzvah for this mitzvah of Sukkot, then you don't have to build it. You don't have to put up a mezuzah because the structure itself is not meant to be a permanent structure. That's actually the whole theme, really, is that this is a usually temporary structure, very temporary in its appearance and its form, and all you're doing really is you're making it permanent during this time of the holiday. All right. Uh, the 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 basics of a sukkah is that ideally it should have four walls. Obviously, one of the walls should have an opening, so you can use it as a doorway. You can't get into it if it has four walls and no opening. So four walls is ideal. And if it has three walls, it's less ideal, but still kosher. If it has two walls, it is not kosher. It needs to have two walls and a little bit. So like a little bit of a third wall, and if you do that, then your sukkah is a kosher structure. You can use that as your sukkah. But of course, ideally, you should have really four walls. And these walls aren't just made out of anything. They have to be sturdy enough to withstand wind. How much wind? So there's a discussion amongst the poskim about how much wind it can sustain, whether if it's even one tefach, if the walls under normal conditions, we're talking about normal conditions, not talking about, hurricanes and stuff. If in normal conditions, the wind would push the walls, even a tefach, which is say 3 inches or so, fists full of the wall, then that's considered not something you would want to ordinarily stay in, and so that's not the kind of residing that you'd want to do. Therefore, you need to either secure that wall more, or what many people do is they put up string every say every 3 inches or so from the bottom of the so 3 layers of these inches 3 inches apart, going parallel to the ground, and that since the string, if it's taut and it's then it won't move in the wind. Technically, that string counts as your wall, and then your bobbing your moving wall would still be good. You should still, of course, try to secure that outer wall as much as possible. You don't want it to be open enough on the bottom that a small animal could get through, and you don't want it open too much on top that it's not high enough to be an actual wall. So it has to be 10 tefachim. That's minimum size. 10 tefachim is approximately 30 inches or so. So it's about the height of a regular table. So most of your walls are probably taller than that. Anything less than that is just not a wall. It's just a bit of a barrier, maybe at most, on the highway or something. But it's not gonna be considered a wall. These walls can otherwise be made out of anything, really, as long as it doesn't shake in the wind, and as long as you're comfortable sitting in it, and it doesn't smell, it's not disgusting, etc. Um, that's the first thing. A lot of people have asked, can we use, the side of our house as one of the walls of the sukkah? Let's say you build your sukkah in your backyard, right? And you can build 3 walls surrounding it, and the fourth wall will be your house with the sliding door, being your entrance. So that's perfectly kosher, perfectly allowed. Not a problem with that at all. It does not have to be a temporary wall. It could be a permanent wall, like we were saying with the mezuzah and everything. There's nothing wrong with the walls of the sukkah being permanent. The schach cannot be permanent, and there's a workaround for that as well. Since we're on the subject, I might as well tell you now. The schach has to be made of organic material, has to be plant based, and it cannot be plant that is still attached to the earth. So it has to be, it can't be, the branches of a tree that's still in the earth. It has to be, um, it can be the branches of a tree that have been cut off from the tree. That can be your schach. Now, the schach is the most important part of the sukkah, and therefore there are a lot of laws that govern the schach. It can't, like I said, it can't be metal or any other kind of material like that. That can be what's called mekabel tuma. It cannot become impure. So anything that's made already is something that can technically become impure. It talks about this in the Torah. Let's say a jug can become impure if something impure comes into it. The area inside the jug can become impure, and so you can't use jugs for your schach, and you can't use a door because a door is already a built thing. However, the material that made the door was probably wood, and so that wood ordinarily would be able to be used as your schach. Um, okay, so what's the workaround in case you're Um, forgot what the question was. So let's go back. So we've got oh yes, the workaround in case your schach is old. So let's say you built it last year, you built your sukkah last year, and you want to keep it for this year. You can actually do that. So, but the schach has to be new. So in case you don't want to or can't, or whatever, for whatever reason you don't switch out the schach for new schach, what you can do, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. It's not like a lesser quality schach or anything like that. But what you can do is you can just pick up the schach up and down. So take a broomstick or whatever and push the schach up and down like that, and that would make it like it's new. You've rebuilt it, and therefore the sukkah is now is now a new sukkah, and you don't have to worry about any other problems like that. Okay, excuse me. Um, the once you've built your sukkah, once these walls are strong and once you've got this organic material on top, and let's talk a little bit more about that organic material. Now, that organic material should also be resting on other organic material. So, in other words, uh, your your branches, your palm fronds, or your bamboo sheet or mat. So all of those things could technically be used as schach, but they need to be resting directly on wood, even if that wood has can technically be used for building. In other words, if you have 2 by 2 beams or 2 by 4s or anything like that, but and they're cut, in other words, they're prepared for use, but they're not actually building material yet. In other words, they're not built, right? But they are for the purpose of building. You can use that as the support for your schach, and that can also be directly supported by non-wood material. In other words, you can have metal poles being, making up the frame of your sukkah, and on top of those metal poles, you can put up wood slats, even if they're, like I said, made for construction or whatever. And on top of those wood slats, you can put sheets of bamboo or palm fronds or whatever kind of, grape leaves, whatever, fig leaves, whatever kind of leaves you want to use, banana tree leaves, whatever kind of leaves and branches you want to use to cover up your schach. The schach, people are under the assumption, it's not entirely wrong, but people are under the assumption that schach has to be very light. In other words, what I mean by that is you should be able to see the stars at night through your schach, and that no rain and rain should be able to come through. So the truth is that ideally, yes, your schach should be so light enough or not thick enough that you are able to see the sky. But most poskim say that even if you can't, even if indeed, even if you can't see the stars at night, you've got so much schach, it's still a kosher schach, could still be used, and there are even poskim who say that really the standard it shouldn't be at night. It should be during the daytime. If you can see light going through your schach in the day, and you probably can, even if it's a little bit, that's good enough for it to be kosher schach. Um, the rain issue is a little bit different. The rain should be able to go through the sukkah if it rains. Now, one of the reasons for that is that there's an interesting Gemara that tells us that if it rains on Sukkot and interrupts our meal, that's a sign that Hashem is displeased with us. And that makes sense. Like our mitzvah observance isn't as good as it could have and should have been. So Hashem shows his displeasure by giving us rain and forcing us into the house to stop our meal, ruining potentially our dishes and our decorations. We'll get to the decorations soon. And and such. So because that's a sign, and we need to have that kind of sign if we deserve it. So therefore, that's another reason given in the poskim in the religious authorities that that we should have schach that is light enough for rain to get through. That's another explanation. I believe the Aruch HaShulchan says that, but I'm not entirely sure. Maybe a Magen Avraham. I forget now. Either way, that's that is the idea here, in terms of the sukkah. Now, there used to be, and in some, I guess, some parts of the world there still are people who need to have a sukkah that has like a hinged roof that goes on top of it in case it rains. Now, there's nothing wrong with using that on Chol Hamoed. You can't put that up on Sukkot, and if you do use it, even on Chol Hamoed, you cannot eat in the sukkah at that time. That's not considered eating in the sukkah if you're under this hinged roof. Once you remove the roof, you need to make the sukkah all over again. And again, what that means is pushing up the schach up and down a little bit, just shaking it a little bit to make sure it's quote unquote new or renewed, really. Um, Interestingly enough, the Mate Ephraim says, "Afal pisha asa kol hayom betikun hasukah be'atra v'noah be'yetis eight." So even if there's a person who's spent all day preparing the sukkah, making it beautiful, decorating it, as we're going to talk about soon, in the most beautiful way, nevertheless, afal pikein kodem she'elech leveit haKnesset, before going to shul, yesh lo lelech betoch hasukah. V'yayin ba ulai yimtza ba od meuvat sheyochel litkon k'dei sheyeh hakol b'tachlit shleimut kedato. So he should still do right before shul. Should go into the sukkah and check it out. Double check, make sure everything is according to the way it should be. You check the walls. You make sure it's secured on all sides. You've made sure that the wind isn't going to blow the walls in any direction. You've made sure that there's schach. You've made sure that there's decorations, as we'll talk about shortly, and also a thing we haven't talked about yet, but is worth mentioning. You should make sure there's light in the sukkah, right? Besides, so some people actually light candles in the sukkah, but I don't know if I would recommend that. Not entirely safe unless you plan on supervising the entire time. It's it's a fire hazard. But if you're going to use electric light, there's a lot of beautiful things you can do with that. The lamp. Let's say you want to have a lamp hanging from your quote unquote roof, from your schach. So you can have it hanging from the schach, or you can have it hanging from your two by fours or two by twos, or you can have it hanging from your metal frame or whatever. There are lots of ways you can make sure that there's light, make sure there's a timer so that you can enjoy your meals there. You don't have to feel like you're, that you've been abandoned, kicked out of town and forced to live in a hut or something. Your hut can be a very beautiful thing. Speaking of which, as I've been saying, we should talk a little bit about decorations. Now, the sukkah should look decorative. The table should be set. It should look nice. It should feel comfortable. For the last many years, I think almost as long as I've been building a sukkah, we've had sort of like a carpet that we roll out on the floor. It makes it feel a lot more homey. You almost forget that you're in a sukkah sometimes. The carpet it makes it a very big difference. There's no halacha that you have to do that, of course, but it's definitely, um, in my opinion, makes it feel much nicer. Of course, you haven't done it yet, and if it's going to be too difficult for you, don't worry. You have next year to prepare for as well. Hopefully, we'll be celebrating Sukkot for many years to come. Um, so the once you're you can also have decorations on the walls. Very often, little kids in school make all kinds of things, paper chains, or they make pictures, or fake flowers or real flowers. Um, I remember there was a sukkah in our community where every year the family would put up bottles hanging from the ceiling of the different seven species of Israel. So pomegranate and olive oil and things like that. It was a very beautiful decoration like that, and very classy. Um, besides besides that, uh, the The um, we should note that the sukkah, um, which, like I said before, we should eat ideally in the sukkah. Even snacks should be eaten in the sukkah. Certainly, any bread a man should eat in the sukkah as well. Throughout this entire period, even on Chol HaMoed, during the meals of Sukkot nights, we invite something called ushpizin, which is these spiritual spiritual guests, the seven shepherds, as we call them. So Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, Aaron, and David. All people in our history who were famously shepherds. Although the Aaron being a shepherd part is a little trickier to see in the source material. He was obviously one of the leaders of the Jewish people, and definitely a great man who tried to create peace amongst the Jewish people, and so in couples and families, always trying to make peace, which is a beautiful thing. Um, the Sukkot is a very happy time. And what we're happy about really is we're especially happy when we do mitzvot, which is this natural feeling we get when we do good things, when we do the things that Hashem asks us to do. After all, our neshamot, our souls are tied in with Hashem, and we want to do what's right. We want to do good things, and when we do, it feels good. And so people make nice meals for Sukkot. They dress up nicely. They give gifts to the children. All of that is part of the joy of the holiday. Um, the What else can we mention? Um, During Sukkot, we have the arba meaning, the four species that we make a bracha on and we shake together. The most famous one of these is probably the lulav and the etrog. Either one of those is the most famous of the four. Uh, so the etrog is a citron fruit, a definitely not a lemon, but related to the citrus and it's in the citrus family. After all, it's called a citron in English, and it's we've talked in previous years how it's very different from a lemon. The skin is very thick and the fruit is very small inside the flesh of the fruit. There are a number of laws that govern whether an etrog is kosher to be used for this mitzvah, and there's certain things that make it mehudar, make it prettier or nicer, whether it has a pitom, whether it doesn't have a pitom, whether it's green, whether it's yellow, how bumpy it is, its shape, where if it has scratches or dots or spots, or if it's altogether and has cuts on it or something. All of that would determine more about the relative value, both in terms of the mitzvah and in terms of cost, actually, also of the etrog. Lulav is a little more simple. Lulav is the palm leaf. It's the top of the palm tree. You've seen it before. You can look at any palm tree outside your window. You'll probably find the very top of it. There's a stick-looking thing. Looks like an antenna. That's the lulav. It has to be straight. It has to be green. It has to be at least four uh, tefachim long. Four tefachim is again about 12 inches. It's like a foot. That's the smallest kosher lulav. That's quite small in terms of the average. But it has to be whole. It can't be split. Can't be clipped. Can't be cut, etc. Hadassim are three pieces of um, of uh, of willows, and no, not willows. What's it? Hadassim or myrtle, right? Myrtle. And thank you. and there's three of them, and they're supposed to again be straight and green and fresh, and the certainly the top parts of it, the leaves need to be intact. If they once they've fallen out, and they do eventually over the course of the holiday, they sometimes fall out even if they're not taken care of properly, and therefore that too needs to be intact and pretty. Um, the way to, by the way, a trick to taking care of them is to keep them moist and to keep them in a cool place. I wouldn't recommend the refrigerator, by the way. The refrigerator is too cold for them. It's usually, uh, yeah, when you first buy them, before you take them out of the package, the refrigerator is fine. But once you start using them, putting them back in the refrigerator is not ideal. My recommendation is to put them in a wet towel in a cool place where they won't get too hot, won't get dried up. So that's one thing. And the same thing is true for the aravot. That's the willows, right? Uh, yeah. So that's again there's a lot of halachot about them as well. The aravot is if I mean from personal experience, the aravot are the seem to be the thing that people um, lose out on the most in this combination. They usually die before the other four species, and it's unfortunate, but people really need to, I think, take better care of them. Again, moisture, keeping them in a cool place, away from the sun. All of that helps. So what I do is I before Yom Tov even starts, I take a wet towel. I wrap them up in the it's not a wet towel, it's a moist towel, and then I wrap that in aluminum foil, just sort of keep the moisture in and to keep any sun damage away. So those are some tips for the arbor minim. Now there's different customs about when and where to take the arbor minim. Some people insist, based on Kabbalah and based on the practice of the Ari Arizal, that he would take the arba minim in the sukkah. So before davening and everything else, or sometimes after davening and before the shaking of the lulav, they would in shul they would go run to the sukkah, wave the lulav there, and then run back to shul to continue with the davening. In davening, we shake the lulav during Hallel, and then, by the way, while we're doing that, we're holding in our dominant hand, in our stronger hand, we hold the hadassim, the aravot, and the lulav. And in our weaker hand, we hold the etrog. And we're supposed to kind of hold them together, though. So when we shake them, it's a lot of people unfortunately hold all of them in one hand or whatever, or they kind of make up whatever they're doing. So that's the halach of how to do it, is actually to do it like that. The pitom of the etrog should be pointing up, by the way, and that's because that's how the etrog grows in nature, with the pitom pointing up. Okay. With that said, the other time that we hold the arba minim is during the hoshanot. That's when we walk around the shul. We say certain prayers called hoshanas or hoshanot, and at that time we we're supposed to circle around the bima of the shul, and with the arba minim again. These arba minim are held again, three in your dominant hand and the etrog in your weaker hand, and that's done during the all of the days of Sukkot except Shabbat. On Shabbat, we do not take the lulav and etrog at all because of the concern that the Talmud has that somebody would be so excited to check on their lulav, they might carry it in the street on Shabbat, which is not allowed. To have a rabbi or have an expert check it out to make sure it's good. Okay. Um, so those are some of the mitzvot of Sukkot. Another important thing is besides the ushpizin, obviously, you have to have meals in the sukkah. Certainly, the first 2 nights are for sure a Torah responsibility obligation to eat inside the sukkah. After that, it becomes rabbinic, but it's still rather time tested, ancient custom that we've been doing for, or more than a custom for quite a long time. Also, again, kiddush needs to be made. When women light candles, there's a bracha of lahadlik ner shel Yom Tov and a shechianu. The first and second night both get a shechianu. Ideally, the woman should be wearing new clothing or have something, some new fruit again in mind, just like on Rosh Hashanah. But preferable if it's new clothing, it should be a gift. Like I said, receiving gifts during the holiday is a beautiful thing. Um, um, on the subject of a floor, again of the carpet. So the Mati Ephraim definitely encourages people to do that. He says it symbolizes the clouds of glory that again that the sukkah itself represents the clouds of glory. And again, if you can do that, that's great. But if you can't, it is still a kosher sukkah. Um, the sukkah should be in a place where it's not under any trees or under any roofs, of course, but also it should be in a place where you feel comfortable, where you're not where it's not smelly and it's not disgusting, it's not it's not uncomfortable or dangerous for sure. You don't build your sukkah in the middle of the lion cage or something. I'm not sure the zoo would let you do that anyway. And that's another thing, by the way. There's such a concept as a stolen sukkah. You're not allowed to steal a sukkah, and what that means, uh, halachically, is you can't build a sukkah in a place that you don't own. So not the not own outright. You can be even renting it, but a place that is owned by somebody else, and you're taking over their land. You're basically squatting in their land, and you built a sukkah there. So that would be a problem. Highly not recommended. Uh, Furthermore, um, uh, the as we said before. Um, there's a mitzvah to eat in the sukkah unless it rains, in which case you can go inside, obviously. Now, of course, this becomes a challenge on the first 2 nights. If it's if it's certainly if it's dangerous, that's one thing. But even if it's not dangerous, just uncomfortable, you should try your hardest to eat in the sukkah. Unless your food is ruined by by the rain, which is a different topic. Obviously, everybody should do it their mitzvah as best they can under the best conditions possible. Okay. Um, there are people just to give you an idea of how beloved these mitzvot could be. The Mati Ephraim writes, "Bnei Aliyah hayu menashkim kol mitzvot be'ed mitzvatan." There's certain people who are so pious, so holy, so connected to the mitzvot that they do that they kiss mitzvot that they're doing. Kamo sukkah hayu menashkim b'sukkah B'chnisato v'yitziato. Some people kiss their sukkah before and after when they're coming into it, when they're leaving it. That's how much they love this mitzvah. V'chein ba'arba minim shebelulav, and also they kiss the arba minim, the hadassim, the aravot, the lulav. Be careful kissing the lulav; it is spiky. But this all of this shows, and he's quoting here from the Aliyah Rabbah, but all of this shows a person's love for mitzvot, and God willing, we should all see to do mitzvot to the best of our ability, to try and really enjoy this holiday. Yom Simchatenu. It's a time of joy and happiness, and the way to have real happiness, as we said before, is to do the mitzvah properly. To have a beautiful sukkah. I've told the story before, but it's worth repeating. There have been times in Jewish history when it's not been so easy to keep these mitzvot. The Rabbi. I believe the story is told about Rabbi Jacobowitz, a former chief rabbi of England. When he was a young child, he lived in France during the beginnings of the was it France? I think it was France. Yeah, during the sort of the bump in anti-Semitism that occurred there right before World War II, and he was uncomfortable. They had a porch, they had an apartment, and on the balcony of the apartment is where they would usually build the sukkah. And there was just too much anti-Semitism. He didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel safe putting up a sukkah there. Who knows what they would have done? They could have started a fire or whatever. So what they did was they built the minimum possible sukkah. Again, very, very short, about the height of, like I said before, the height of a table, and it was basically not visible from the street level, right? Because it's so low. And then the family would basically crawl on hands and knees, would crawl underneath their schach that was on their balcony, and eat their meals like that, the whole family. And it's in the merit of the Jews who make those kinds of sacrifices that we're around today to continue in these traditions, and hopefully under happier and happier conditions until the coming of Mashiach b'mheira b'yameinu. Enjoy your holiday.